Georgia lawmakers will pass a major hurdle tomorrow when the House is expected to pass a state supplemental budget. Normally, that kind of story might make the eyes glaze over, but this year, it's a milestone that could shape for the better in a pandemic-stricken legislative session. Here's 11 Alive Doug Richards.
Most years, lawmakers walk into the Capitol every January expecting to stay in their legislative session through about the end of March. This year, many lawmakers would like to reduce that stay quite a bit. There is no escaping the presence of COVID-19 at the Capitol. Not only are lawmakers required to submit to COVID testing, but Tuesday, about 14% of the House was absent, a number that grew when House Speaker David Ralston evicted a Gwinnett County House member who refused COVID testing.
Escort the member from the chamber.
That bit of drama seemed to raise the stakes for those lawmakers remaining to work fast. The Georgia Constitution makes only two requirements of lawmakers: that they pass a budget and that they meet for no more than 40 days. Thursday, House members expect to pass a supplemental budget for this year.
It's more of a security measure that if we wind up having to take a break because of a COVID outbreak, either among members or among staff, that work is done.
Lawmakers do have to pass another budget for next year, but much of that committee work has taken place virtually and will continue to do so. This legislative day stayed mostly free of COVID drama, as the evicted representative, David Clark, did not show up at the Capitol today to try to regain his seat. He will have the opportunity to take a COVID test Thursday if he wants, in time to pass the constitutionally required supplemental budget. As the state COVID vaccination program spreads, it is conceivable that lawmakers could suspend this legislative session for a period of weeks, perhaps even into late spring or summer. Conceivable being the operative word at this point.